Before we get to the woodworking, there's a bit of a sad story behind this build. This is my boy Chucky. He's a really good cat to rescue from a shelter. There's two things he loves: sleeping and eating. About a year ago, he started to get sick. He couldn't eat anymore. So we took him for tests, and it turned out he needed his thyroid removed. He had to go for surgery, and since then he's struggled to eat from anything that isn't a raised platform. My wife and I put down this cardboard box to hold up his food bowl, but it was just a temporary situation. Here we are 6 months later. Okay, enough pulling at your heartstrings. Now, time to actually build something for this. The initial idea was to take these two pieces of scrap plywood I had lying around, cut them down to size, and make a little box out of it. Doing the miters like this on the table saw didn't feel that comfortable. I kept at it, but the end result didn't work out so well. Although they fitted nicely at a right angle, the issue was that I ended up cutting too much off one side, and they didn't match up anymore. So I kinda had to throw this away and start again. I still have the scrapwood oak from some living room chairs. It's been very handy for small projects like this. I don't have a planer or a jointer, so my way of milling this down is just on the table saw. To make my life much easier, I cut it down as small as possible before I resaw it. Now to thin it out into the correct thickness. I like to lift the blade to just above the top of the piece. smooth. And a little bit of cleanup on the go. Now for these, I switched the miter joint around so it's facing away from me. That felt a lot less sketchy, and I felt much more confident making these cuts. And as you can see, it worked out pretty well. So my plan was to create a little template and route out some nice legs. You'll see the initial sketch I drew on the workpiece. So first up, cut out the template. I felt like I was getting a bit too much resistance with the jigsaw, so I went and did this. Turns out, I'm smart enough to not touch a moving blade, but dumb enough to not realize it's really hot. So that's a warning to everyone. Jigsaw blades get really hot really quickly. Be safe. In spite of the burn, I powered through, kinda struggling with my fingers a little bit. It was at this point where I figured I needed to run it under cold water.
A few minutes later.
Alright, back, feeling in less pain, just needed to finish this little bit off, sand it down, and file it down a bit until it was exactly the template I needed. I call that move the clamp dance. Note that I used the same piece of wood for the long and short templates. Initially I just cut out the short section, then did the routing, and then I cut out the long section, so expanded on this a little bit, refiled it down, smoothed out the template, and then routed the longer sections. If it's not clear, hopefully it will become clear in the next minute or two. You can see me still struggling with my fingers there. I decided to not use the jigsaw after that incident, at least for the first two pieces. I went back to it later because this is way too much work. If you don't have one of these Japanese pull saws in your workshop, I strongly suggest you get one. They are so much better than the Western style push saws for a lot of things. Now I put a lot of effort into rough cutting this. I'm still going to use a router to get a bit closer, but this was mostly just to reduce the amount of router work I had to do. Blue tape and CA glue was my poison for today. I tried with some double-sided tape, but it did not work well, and the piece went flying, so I decided to stick to this. Maybe you can hear it, but I have some very cheap big box store router bits in a very cheap Amazon board router. I mean, they get the job done eventually, it's just not very satisfying. Alright, and repeat on the long sides. I decided to do the rough cutting on the template, just had to be a bit careful where I was cutting, but it saved a lot of effort. Also worth noting, I actually just screwed the template down to my workbench. Because I've got the sheet of MDF on top of my workbench, I don't really care if I screw stuff to it. Very, very helpful. The good old blue tape to do miter joints glue up trick. I'm sure you've all seen it on everyone else's woodworking YouTube channel. Now before anyone asks about the strength of the miter joints, for this sort of box it really is strong enough. There's plenty of YouTube videos dispelling how weak miter joints are. They're fine for 90% of the use cases. Like, I wouldn't stand on this, but to put a cat food bowl on top, it's fine. To route out the rabbit for the tray, I just screwed some scrap wood into my workbench, and that was good enough to hold the box in place while I routed. Note the 3x3 customs router jig. This would have gotten a lot easier with the rabbiting bit, but I don't have one, so had to do what I could with just a straight bit. I didn't capture it on camera, but I cut down a piece of acrylic for the tray. I thought this would look a lot cooler than a piece of wood, and it's also super easy to clean since Chucky's quite a messy eater. Now with the smallest round over bit that I've got, I just rounded over all the bottom edges. This gives it a nice rounded, soft look. Then I gave each side a quick sand, starting at 80 grit and then going to 180, not higher than that because of the hard wax oil, which doesn't want you to go too high.
Many minutes later.
And now everybody's favorite part of a project, applying the finish. If you've seen any of my other vids, you know my process. I use this hard wax oil, paper towels, wipe it on. I went very thick coats on this one because I wanted it to be quite glossy and almost a plasticky finish. Polyurethane probably would have been better, but I don't have it and I love this finish, so sticking to it. And here's the end product. In use already. As you can see, he's already trying to spill wet food all over it. The removable tray was a good idea. It makes it much easier to clean. That's all for this one, folks. I hope you had a good time. Remember, like and subscribe and do all the usual stuff that everyone asks. And I will see you next time.